on his first jump off of a cliff in Italy, the first time he put a wingsuit on. And it's that one stung a bit. So it's on pause, potentially forever as far as base jumping goes. I'll still skydive, but it's a question mark on the base jumping side of the house.
So fun. You do such risky shit. The skydive was like, yeah, skydiving. That's no big deal. I'll skydive. I'll jump out of a fucking plane.
That I would do with my eyes closed every day. That's the high risk ratio on that one is we're all set.
What is the risk ratio on skydiving? Like what percentage of those things go wrong?
It's incredibly low. So that you have a main parachute and a reserve parachute. I don't think there has been a true double failure, meaning your main parachute malfunctions, you cut it away properly, and deploy your reserve parachute and have that also fail in 20-some years. People die skydiving all the time. Well, not all the time, because I guess the population of people that do it is not huge. But I would say the vast majority of people who die skydiving, they kill themselves. They make a poor decision. And most people who die skydiving die under perfectly functioning equipment.
Really?
So the canopy size, the main canopy that you're flying, the wing over your head, the smaller it is, the faster it goes, the faster it descends, but also, quite frankly, the more fun it is. But with fun, there's consequence. So there are canopies that you can initiate a turn, and if you initiate the turn too low, you cannot pull the canopy out of the turn. You will impact the ground at a high rate of speed regardless of what you do. And if you get under that canopy with not enough experience, obviously your odds of making a bad decision are going to go through the roof. So most injuries and fatalities, at least from the stuff I have seen, is from people making poor decisions under good equipment or choosing to execute an emergency procedure, which would be cutting away your main parachute and deploying reserve, either out of sequence or doing it too low where the reserve parachute doesn't have time to open. To me, that's not a failure of the parachute system. That's the failure of the individual who is driving that parachute system.
So if you have a main parachute and you jump out and you hit the main parachute and there's a malfunction, how do you cut it off to get the other one?
So there's two pillows, one on each side. Mm-hmm. The right-hand side, you literally need to do this in the correct order, even though people have killed themselves by going backwards. So you pull to full arm extension. It's literally just a pillow with Velcro that has two cables, and the cables are what's actually holding the parachute on your shoulders. If you pull that out, a 3-ring release system, which is basically just a load reduction system, unwinds itself and your parachute's gone, and you're going back into free fall, and you just pull the other pillow. It sounds worse than it is, and before I had my first cutaway, it was terrifying. And then after you have 4 or 5, you're like, okay, I got this.
You had 4 or 5 main parachutes fail?
I think I'm at about 7.
Jesus Christ, Andy Stumpf.
Well, I've been jumping for 20 years.
I don't want to hear that, man.
I started jumping in 99. Statistically, I'm actually, I think, under. I think it's like 1 in every 888 jumps, you'll have a malfunction or a gear failure. It's honestly, like your first one is an emotional experience.
I would imagine. What was the first one?
Deploying a parachute and just sitting there looking at it as it's, because they want to open, and I can tell now within an instant of trying to deploy my parachute whether or not it's going to open or not, just by looking at the shape, by sometimes listening to it, and just seeing how it opens. Sometimes, so packing a parachute people think is really difficult. If you can fold a t-shirt, you can pack a parachute. Sometimes, though, you just get off of a jump and you only have 10 minutes to make the next jump. So you skip a few steps or you rush through a few steps.
Is that what happened with you?
Potentially. I may have skipped all of the non-essential steps and a few of the essential steps to get the parachute.
Really?
Yeah. I was just rushing, and I didn't have a lot of experience, so I was stuffing the thing in there. And when I tried to deploy the parachute, it was asymmetrical. So sometimes it'll open and it'll start spinning, and then you're flying with your back to the. That would be considered an exciting moment, I would say.
So what happened with you? What exactly went wrong?
It just came out asymmetrically. The parachute wasn't opening.
And were you spinning?
No, I wasn't. I actually was able to recognize just by it should come out. It looks like a rectangle more than anything. But if you look like a rectangle that's twisted, there's no way to fix that.
No way.
So just get rid of it. And that's what I did. I looked up and I said, okay, that's not going to work. Reach, pull. And your reserve opened so fast. Like I felt like by the time I had pulled the reserve handle, because I had a handle at that point, by the time I had moved my arm to 3/4 of extension, it had fired off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude.
But the difference, and you were asking the difference, like why is risk skydiving lower, is because you have time. thousands of feet. Whereas base jumping, you might have hundreds. Or if you're really pushing the envelope, you might have sub 10 feet because you're flying close to the ground as fast as you can go.
Did your friend Alex, who died, did he die base jumping? Or
he died wingsuit base jumping, something that he was my main base jumping partner.
What is the difference between wingsuit base jumping and regular base jump? Regular base jumping, you just have a quick deploy parachute, right?
So you have one parachute system when you base jump instead of two, because there is not time for a reserve to open. So that is just taken out of the system.
Right.
So you pack your primary or only parachute very similar to a reserve. It's designed to open rapidly. It's designed to take a lot of load. So base jumping is just jumping off of a static object. Base stands for building, antenna, span, or earth. So four types of object. The addition of the wingsuit is really the only difference, which allows you to, like for myself personally, I'm not a huge fan of jumping off buildings and cliffs without a wingsuit because I don't like being from me to that flag when a parachute opens. Because if it doesn't open exactly in the direction you want it to, you better be Johnny on the spot or you're going to have a fucking problem. So it's, to me, if you have enough altitude, you put a wingsuit on, in 2 or 3 seconds, the suit is mocking forward. So then you're hundreds, if not thousands of feet away from the object. Then your parachute can open up however you want it to.
Have they made any improvements in the technology of this stuff since you first started jumping?
Huge improvements. I mean, the first wingsuits were literally just fabric that had like the little thumb loops you'll find on like cold weather long sleeve shirts sometimes. Seriously. Like Patrick.
That's how you kept it on?
That's how they kept it on. I didn't jump any of those goddamn things. But, I mean, I think Patrick Desjardins is how you say his name. He was one of the first, and they would just sit there and they would just jam their appendages and lock them out and use their entire musculature to sail this fabric as far out as they could get.
Fuck.
And then the suits now are unbelievable. So each wing, like the wing between your legs and the wing between each of your arms, so there's 3 of them, they're totally independent. They have a ram air opening. So the air rushes into that and makes the wing semi-rigid, so it reduces the stress on your body. And their flight characteristics are insane. You can get the suit flying faster. You can fly it flatter. You can float. Everything about it is improved, except for the decision-making process of the monkey who's actually jumping it.
That's the original one, Jamie?
Oh, that guy's dead for sure.
It says Manus Mickey Morgan wearing
He's
a
100% dead.
Batwing suit. Is that ridiculous? Well, who was the first fucking psycho that thought that this was something that they should try?
It could potentially
Look at
have
this
been
asshole. Oh my God. This guy's like, he looks like he's living in the 1800s. When did they invent these fucking things?
I don't know. I know one of these guys died going off the Eiffel Tower in an exhibition.
This is 1900 right here.
1900? Yep. What in the fuck? Look at that guy.
Strong.
You know what, man? If you were living in 1900, you'd probably be like, listen, let's just get this over with. Fuck living in 1900. Everyone has syphilis. Yeah. Fucking whiskey's illegal. I'm just jumping off.
Look at that.
That is crazy.
So
when you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, honestly, I'm not going to lie. I would probably jump that out of an airplane.
1895.
Yeah.
Oh, he's the inventor. Earl Stein. He died in the first attempt. Oh, Jesus Christ. He died in the first attempt. Honor to a modern hero. All right, settle down.
But here's the thing, Joe. There's like 60-some people who are associated with the modern-day wingsuit and testing and evaluating to get it to this point. Mm-hmm. They're all dead.
All of them are dead.
Every one of them.
Jesus.
But that suit, like, I mean, that suit and the difference between that and where we are now, it's night and day.
But everyone involved in the creation of these wingsuits died in a wingsuit.
Yep.
Fuck, man.
Yep.
That is not good. Like, there wouldn't be a whole lot of black belts in jiu-jitsu if everyone who got to a certain point died. You know what I'm saying?
It's hard to justify or rationalize the behavior for sure. I'll be the first person to admit that.
What is it? Like, what is it about?
So that's
this
Dean
guy
Potter.
jumped with his dog.
That's Dean Potter jumping with his dog.
Oh, the poor dog.
So the dog...
It's not the dog's fault.
The dog, I believe, that looks like Switzerland.
Crazy asshole fucking owner.
So Dean was insane, right? He was a world-class rock climber. He's also dead from jumping a wingsuit. He died in Yosemite. It's... Like I said, the technology advances. I was not there the day that Dean died. I've talked to people who have looked at it as to the conditions that led up to it. And one thing people generally don't want to do is place the responsibility on the individual making the choice. But from everything that I have seen, he made a choice to jump at a time when he should not have been jumping due to visual conditions. So even though the suits are amazing, really the only thing that doesn't seem to be evolving is the person that's jumping it. Most of the time, just like skydiving, it's just a human being making a very poor choice, to include Alex.
What is it about people, and I mean particularly people like yourself, that love these thrills? Like, what are you getting out of that? What are you getting out of that other than this mad adrenaline rush? I mean, what is it? Like, what motivates you to keep doing that?
So if I look back at it objectively, I think when I initially started pushing hard down that path, I was trying to replicate a headspace or a feeling or a sensation that I had in my old job. So if you want to talk about clarity of thought, and I think we might have talked about this the very first time that we sat down, stripping away all ancillary bullshit that has absolutely no meaning, but for me at least, I spend 99% of my time worrying about things that have no impact whatsoever.
Right.
So you sit on a helicopter, pick the battle space that you're in, and you get a 5-minute warning. And you really stop worrying about whether or not you have enough money in your checking account to cover your mortgage. And then you get a 3-minute warning. And then you kind of stop worrying about whether or not you just had an argument with your wife or you just sent off some snarky email. Then you get a 1-minute warning and a 30-second warning. And the closer and closer and closer you get, everything is gone. And it is still to this day the sensation and state that I have been in that is by far, I had no question about my purpose, and I had the utmost clarity that I've ever experienced in my life. And you get used to operating in that headspace of just being in the moment. The first 1 to 3 seconds in front of you, nothing else matters. I'm going to solve this problem and move on to the next one. This problem and move on to the next one. Well, then I lost that ability to do that. And it sucked because I liked operating in that headspace because it helped me deal with all the other bullshit in my life because it reset for me my what matters and what doesn't matter ratio. I was able to get rid of I would describe it as just the white noise in my head. Or another way I'll describe it is like Jamie's got a bunch of levers that he can push up. I think I'm included in this. I think most people are pegged out at a 10 almost all the time. They're fucking white knuckling through life. But if you can get into that state where you have that clarity of purpose, clarity of focus, I felt like it pulled everything back to a 3. And so that state helped me in things that had nothing to do with that activity, and it lasted for a long time. So when you're base jumping and you're standing on a cliff and you're scared out of your mind and you can't talk because your mouth is so dry and you have a pee ring on your suit, which is why you always get dark suits so people can't see your pee ring. And every alarm bell in your body is telling you don't jump. And I had the same experience. I wasn't worried about the checking account. I wasn't worried about what was going on in life. I was just living in that moment. And it helped me be a better dad. It helped me be a better husband. It helped me be better at any business decision that I need to make because it allowed me to pull all of those stereo levers back down. So it's less for me, and I can only speak for me, it's less about thrill seeking because I get that all the time. Like, you're an adrenaline junkie. I'm like, I'm an adrenaline enthusiast. I certainly enjoy that, but I actually like what I get from the activity more than the activity itself.
What do you think is going on where people are pegged at 10 all the time with nonsense, and that something that's life-threatening can bring it back to a 3 and offer clarity? I mean, there has to be something that you've discussed or thought about in depth.
I just think it helps you Control, Alt, Delete your hard drive a little bit. It helps by not having, like when I'm standing on a cliff right before I get ready to jump, there is absolutely nothing that I am thinking about other than where I want to be in the next 3 seconds. And by being able to focus on something so singular, and maybe I don't meditate, but I've heard people talking about, by being able to clear your mind, it helps them deal with everything else. I think there might be some connection there. But I just think that the removal of the noise that bombards everybody all day long, even for a little bit, helps you. It's you have iPhone and headphones for sure, right? Mm-hmm. And you ever notice, like when you're listening to it, you listen at the same volume level, but then it doesn't seem to be as loud. So what do? You click it up a notch, right? And then you get used to that volume level, and then you click it up a notch, and then you get used to that volume level. And receptor downgrade phenomenon. Your body gets used to it, so it adapts to it. But if you pull that stimulus out and leave it at that high volume, but listen to it like 2 weeks later, it's going to blow your ears out. It'll seem louder. It's not going to blow your ears out, but it's going to seem much louder than it would if you slowly just incrementally started adding that volume. So there's something in there that is allowing me, and I'm not recommending that anybody pursue therapy via the directions that I do, but there's something in there that's allowing me to, instead of add and add and add and add, that activity allows me to detach, and then when I come back to it, I realize, it just feels different for me. I don't know if that's a good description of the mechanism, but that's the best that I can probably describe it.